5. The farmer and the Baron Faust spent the next day in bed. Mirabella took good care of him and made sure he ate enough. He was quite confused. Mirabella was a stranger, yet she was incredibly kind and caring. He also blushed whenever he thought back to her holding him. Shame painted his cheeks. After a day, he was able to leave the bed. I feel like I was reborn. He smiled. He sat up and removed his blankets, sitting on the bedside. He was alone. Where are my clothes? He wondered as he looked around the room and noticed a light brown pair of pants, socks, a belt, and a blue linen shirt neatly folded over a chair. The room was cozily warm. He stood up and groaned, finally ridding his limbs of the stiffness accumulated from laying down for over a day. He took a few minutes to stretch and mobilize his body until he felt rather comfortable. He had long arms and big hands. He was also quite mobile. His body still looked very malnourished. He didn't feel as bad as before anymore, due to the food. Mirabella fed him. He put on the clothes, and the fabric was finer than anything he had ever worn before. He caressed the fine linen before putting it on. It was very wide, only getting tighter at the waist. It hid his skinny body and made him appear rather noble. He looked down at himself and shook his head. All of this is too expensive. This probably costs more than a cow. This color. He marveled at the clothing right before the door burst open, and Skank ducked through it to enter. He was 2.2 meters tall after all. When he saw Faust dressed and standing, he smiled happily. He was glad to see the boy was well again. Kid, good to see you up on two legs again. He laughed and patted Faust's shoulder. Looking good. Faust gulped. I'll give them right back after earning my clothes, somehow. I can't afford these. Nor can I pay you for the food. He appeared a bit helpless. The food Mirabella fed him was the best he'd ever tasted. He concluded it was also the most expensive. Shank roared in laughter. Do I look that poor? You can keep these clothes. I can't have you looking like a beggar. He stopped. Took a breath and continued. I wanted to talk to you about something. Why don't you accompany me to take a bath? We can talk while we do. My servants already prepared 2 bathtubs, so you can't refuse. Shank added the last part, as he saw that Faust was about to refuse. The boy was completely taken aback as he looked down his body at the clothes and asked once more timidly, For me? Shank only smiled and nodded. Don't worry, kid. Anyone who would abuse you in your situation would be a heartless idiot. No. Now shut up and come with me. He turned around and ducked through the door again. Faust could just walk through with enough space to spare. How can a man be that big? It wasn't the first time Faust asked himself this question, but he thought it would be rude to mention. He was still very careful and apprehensive around him, now that he knew who Shank was. Mirabella told him when she brought him food the day before. But he knew that the treatment he received and the kindness shown should be enough to convince him of his good intentions. If a woman like Mirabella trusts him, then so can I, he concluded, and the 2 men walked through a hallway. The castle wasn't ugly on the inside, but the walls were whitewashed and the floor wooden. The two walked for a few minutes, and then Shank opened a large wooden door with beautiful carvings. He didn't need to duck this time. "Welcome to the bathroom," Shank exclaimed, and spread out his hands presenting the room. It was beautiful. The bath was a room filled with well-crafted tiles, a large window that let in sunlight, white walls, potted plants, and two big, round bathtubs that could even accommodate Shank's ridiculously large body. In between the two tubs, there was a desk with a carafe filled with wine and two bronze goblets. Faust didn't recognize the metal, nor the materials the tiles and windows were made from. But he knew they must be extremely expensive. If he knew their actual value, he would have probably fled the room. Shank noticed the boy was extremely uncomfortable and got curious. "What is it, boy?" "Oh, I forgot you're not used to luxury like this." He scratched his head. Faust's expression eased a bit. "No, not really." He chuckled. Shank closed the door with a creak. "Don't worry so much. It all belongs to me. Just enjoy it. I thought you could use some relaxation. Have you ever had a hot bath?" Faust shook his head a bit ashamed. "Not really. It's just too tedious to heat all the water if you only have a small pot." Shank nodded, undressed, and hopped into one of the bathtubs. Faust gulped as he saw the many scars on Shank's body. He immediately thought of how Shank must have gotten them, and started sweating a bit. After a minute, he gathered his resolve and glid into the second bathtub. The water was steaming hot, yet it was a nice hot sensation that enveloped his body, and he sighed, causing a cheerful laugh from Shank. "Nice, isn't it? Now I've got something even better." He grabbed a small vial next to the tub and put a few drops into the water. Immediately, a smell of pine tar spread through the room. They spent a few minutes silently enjoying the water before Shank spoke. "Kid, died. I know it's hard on you. I hope my wife treated you well. I've had a long talk with her about you." "Talk with her?" Faust grew anxious. Shank immediately assured him. "Nothing bad. The opposite, even." He smiled. "We want to offer you something I wouldn't normally offer anybody else." Faust couldn't believe his ears. "You've given me too much already. I'm not worthy to receive even more, my lord." From his early childhood on, his parents had ingrained into him the difference between a noble and a commoner. He didn't believe himself to be even deserving of anything Shank had given him. "I would also receive something from you," Shank quickly said. "I need men. Reliable, loyal men. You're young. I would like to invite you to join my retinue and become a soldier." "What? A soldier? No backbreaking work on a farm anymore. Can I gain strength? Avenge my family? Make money? Live in this castle?" Many questions shot through his head, and he looked quite puzzled on the outside. Yet Shank waited patiently with an understanding smile. "I know it's probably overwhelming. Take your time and ask any questions you want." Faust opened his mouth, wanting to say something, and then closed it again. In no world did he expect such an offer. He thought the Baron would send him onto the farm of a rich farmer as a peon. He thought some more, and one question plagued his mind. Schenk noticed and cocked his head. "Spit it out, boy." Faust took a deep breath and asked, "Will I be able to avenge my family?" Schenk was taken aback, but then realized that his question made a lot of sense. Then the Baron nodded grimly. "You will have to. The Bloodhand tribe will not disappear into thin air on its own." "Then I accept." Faust showed a sad smile. "Though I'm not confident I'd be able to defeat an orc baby at this point." Die. What do you think you will spend your days doing now that you'll no longer have to work on a farm? Tending to gardens? No. You'll train for combat." He raises a fist and smiles. "You will gain weight, learn to wield different weapons, and how to fight in formation, act under stress, and more." Schenk seemed to enjoy holding fiery speeches about Faust's future improvements. He found it hard to imagine, but he would take his chances. While Schenk prepared to continue his passionate elaboration, the door swung open, and a very, very tall girl about Faust's age stood in the door. Her long blonde hair was tied up into a bun, and her slim body was covered by a modest. Was colorful dress. If not for her childish facial features, he would have thought this woman was several years older than him. As she barged in, she shouted, "Father! Father!" only to abruptly shut up when she noticed Faust. She blushed, but remained confident and looked at them. Faust had to smirk slightly. He was a bit enchanted by her confidence and beauty. He wouldn't show that, of course. She couldn't see his naked body anyway. Schenk laughed at her reaction. "Don't mind Faust. He doesn't bite." "I don't," Faust added with a smile. "That's so?" "Schenk's daughter?" Leona asked with her hands on her hips. "But I do. Be careful," she says seriously before a sweet smile brightened her face. "Father!" There was another survivor from Poplia. A young girl. "Lucan sent me to tell you." Faust's face immediately lit up. "A girl? What's her name?" Leona shrugged with a sigh. "Dunno. You'll have to ask her yourself. I'm back to training." She waved off and turned around to leave. Before she closed the door, she couldn't help but glance at Faust one more time. Schenk couldn't see it, but Faust could have sworn she had just winked at him. When she left, Schenk turned to him with a frown. "Don't get any ideas about her. I warn you." He threatens as he imitates a pair of scissors cutting with his fingers. Faust gulped and nodded quickly. Schenk then starts roaring with laughter. She doesn't put boys into her eyes anyways. All that's in her head is training. Training? More training, more noise. He shakes his head with a smile. Faust could see how dearly Schenk loved his daughter. She prefers the sword over the kitchen. He shrugs. "I don't mind at all. But Mirabella is sometimes a bit sour. She says Leona is too manly and not feminine enough." "What do you think?" he asked with a provoking smirk. He knew exactly that there was no right answer to the questions. Yet Faust smirked to himself and announced, "She has the best of both worlds." That answer was so unexpected that it caused Skenk to laugh. What a quick-witted reply. "Kid, I'm starting to like you." Outside of the door, Leona walked away quickly. Her face was flushed as she mumbled, "Faust." Sh- 6. The Miller's Daughter. After the bath and talk with Schenk, Faust felt very refreshed. He was clean and had just heard that there was another survivor from Poplia. A beautiful girl at that. He quickly went through the girls his age in his head before meeting Vitas on one of the lower floors. "Kid, you heard there's another survivor, didn't you?" he said happily. "How? A cute girl at that," he added with a smirk in Faust's direction. "I have, though I wasn't told her name. Do you know it? Her name is Flora. Mirabella is quite charmed by the little angel. Want to meet her?" The man offered. Yes, please." He stammered as images of a petite girl, his age, shot through his mind. He had known Flora for all his life. She was the miller's daughter and one of his friends. They often went bathing together when they were younger, though in recent years they avoided it due to both of them hitting puberty and their parents forbidding it. Nonetheless, they remained good friends. A sheepish smile crept onto Faust's face when he thought of her. He thought she was beautiful and kind. "Oh God," Vitus laughed. "I know that look. Wipe that sheepish smile off your face, lover boy. I'll bring you to her room." With a complicated smile, Faust followed the veteran through the hallway until they arrived at a room. Pretty close to his own. That's her room. If you're lucky, she's on her own right now. I'll take my leave, kid. Make sure to get down to the large hall after your talk to have lunch. You have to eat. You're barely skin and bones. How do you want to kill an orc with that?" He pointed at the boy who put on a wry smile, as he knew the old man was just joking. As he watched the soldier leave, "He is right, though. I should eat as much as I can, even more. But needs strength." A picture of Skenk showed up in his mind. "I want to become as strong as him." Faust was determined to grow strong. For his survival, to repay Schenk, and to avenge his family. No. Even stronger. A confident glint filled his eyes as he knocked. "Come inside." He could hear a sweet voice from behind the door. He gently opened the door and entered, closing the door behind him. Before he could even close the door, he felt a body slamming against his, hugging him tightly. "Faust." He heard the girl exclaim happily as she buried her head in his chest. "I'm so glad you're alive," she exclaimed, and looked up at his face with a bright smile. She was a cute blonde girl, who was about a head shorter than Leona, yet had been blessed in other areas of her body. Faust felt overwhelmed by her sudden assault, but slowly hugged her back. As he smiled brightly, for the first time since the raid, he was genuinely happy. He felt her soft body press against his. Yet his thoughts were purely on the girl's beaming expression as she saw him. It felt good to be hugged, especially by Flora. I didn't dare hope you survived, but here you are. He laughed and held her tight. They remained in their hug for a few minutes and enjoyed each other's warmth. Then they sat down on the small bench in front of the fireplace, where a small but lively fire was blazing. They sat right next to each other, and the girl, wearing a beautiful light blue dress, smiled up at him, yet Faust could see a tinge of sadness on her face. She couldn't be all right. She had just hugged him, like a drowning person reaching for a piece of wood. He put a hand around her shoulder and pulled her closer. With a sigh, she put her head onto his shoulder. After a few moments of silence, he could hear her husky voice. I don't know how to handle what happened. I don't know if I ever can. He could hear the sadness in her voice, and it reflected what he felt. He could feel her frail body quivering, and when he turned, his head could see that she was crying silently. A sad smile appeared on his face, and he lifted her chin with his left hand. I will never forget what I saw. Never. Then he wiped the tears off her face, which caused her to smile briefly. He found the sight enchanting. When I saw you, the pain briefly disappeared, but it immediately returned. And I don't know how to stop it, she continues. But before she could speak herself into a rage, Faust hugged her, and after a minute the sobs slowly ebbed. I'm sorry, she muttered with her head still on his chest. Don't be. We're in this together, Flora. We aren't alone. He replies and makes her look up. Look around. We're in a castle. Fate was kind to us. Schenk and Mirabella have taken us in. We don't have to worry about freezing or starving to death, and we even have a future if we work hard. He smiled, and the girl pondered a bit before smiling again. I've missed your positive attitude, even though I know that you've buried the sadness deep inside of you. She put a hand on his chest, right above his heart. You said it yourself. We're not alone. So, don't you dare keep all your problems to yourself. And she then punched his chest with her tender hand and laughed. The care for him she had just shown was a bit too much for him to take in, and he was unable to put order into his feelings that had been in utter disarray ever since he had entered the room. Was this happiness? Relief? Love? He didn't know. He just knew it felt good. Facing her cute reprimanding, he didn't mention how he nearly froze to death. They spent some more time reminiscing about the past, spending time together, making their trauma disappear for the time they spent together. Before he left, Flora shot him a smile and blushed. Faust was unsure how to react, as he also felt a blush creeping onto his face. He quickly said his goodbyes and left hurriedly to escape the awkward situation. Yet both of them could hear their own heartbeat. She's too cute, he said to himself, before making his way down and into the large hall. It was located on the ground floor and was a large room with multiple fireplaces to keep it warm and cozy. In the middle were 4 big tables with long benches next to them. On the other end of the room was the Baron's table. The ground was elevated, so the Baron's table could overlook the rest of the room. The walls were filled with banners. The room was empty, except for a few servants preparing lunch. There was nothing ugly or cold about this hall. It was filled with beautiful carvings, flowers, banners, paintings, and many other things that amazed Faust. He couldn't even imagine the worth of all of these things. All of that is probably more expensive than the entire village, he thought, before a cold feeling spread when he thought of his home. He quickly thought of Flora's smile, and it dampened the pain to a bearable degree. He couldn't help but smile about himself. "You're a mess." He snickered as he shook his head slightly. The banners showed different motives. The one most prominently placed showed a golden 8-spoked wheel on a scarlet background. Faust had never seen such vibrant colors and was about to touch it when he heard someone clear their throat behind him. "What are you doing?" "You better not touch that. I doubt you could pay it off if you damaged it," an arrogant voice said from behind him. Faust whirled around and stared at a black-haired man about his age. He had his hair combed to the sides. He was muscular and had an aloof facial expression. Next to him stood a slightly fat but burly man, maybe a year older than them. His short curly brown hair and smile made him appear much nicer than the arrogant prick next to him. Faust concluded. Faust chose to choose de-escalation and sighed internally. He couldn't offend anybody in this castle. "My name is Faust. I'm new to the castle. Please forgive me." He stretched out his hand and smiled. The fat boy immediately smiled and shook his hand. "I'm Cassius. Nice to meet you. We only arrived 2 weeks ago. And this prick next to me is Aquila. He's nicer than he appears." He smirked at Aquila, who hit Cassius on the back of his head, which caused him to giggle. It wasn't a hard slap, and Faust could see that Aquila smiled briefly. "Don't talk shit about me in front of the fresh meat." Aquila reprimands with a slight smile. Yeah. Fuck off." Cassius laughed. Aquila sighed and shook Faust's hand as well. "You heard him. I'm Aquila. Welcome to the castle. What village are you from?" "Poplia," Faust answered after a brief moment of silence. The two men were taken aback and gulped. I didn't mean to. You must be Faust." "I'm sorry." The previously arrogant Aquila immediately apologized. "Great. Knowledge about the tragedy has already spread. But at least he isn't a heartless prick." Faust was glad to make new friends, yet loathed the special treatment he would get from nearly anyone who knew about what had happened. "It's all right. Let's be friends." He managed to press out a smile. Both boys smiled at his reaction, but didn't fail to notice the shadow that hushed over his face when Poplia was mentioned. A week passed in a flash. Faust spent most of his time eating, resting, or talking with Flora, Aquila, and Cassius. His interactions with Flora made him temporarily forget about the events of the past week, and they found comfort when they were with one another. Both couldn't quite figure out their feelings towards one another. They chose to just enjoy each other's company without worrying too much. Exactly 7 days after the raid on Poplia, Faust was having dinner with his new comrades and other soldiers, when a man stumbled into the great hall. and looked around hectically before seeing Schenk sitting on the big table. The Baron stood up abruptly, and the messenger ran over to him. It was Istvan. He fell to one knee before Schenk, and with a loud and clear voice he announced, "I bring news from Earl Alexander." Devon. Jealousy Schenk, Lucan, Vetus, and his other most trusted aides all stood up. Schenk signaled Istvan. His face showed an eager expression. "Spill it, Istvan." "It's good news, sire." The messenger smiled before clearing his throat and taking out a scroll of paper. He began to read it out loud. All 50 soldiers in the hall listened. Nobody was talking anymore. Earl Alexander of Vostrum, heir to the Argoris dukedom, has recognized the great danger posed to his realm by the Orc tribes, and has decided to allocate money to the baronies bordering the Orc lands. He orders his barons to enlarge their standing armies and modernize the equipment. Vostrum Castle will receive 5 gold ducats, and is expected to increase the size of its army from 200 to 500 within 5 years. Istvan concluded. The entire room remained quiet. Nobody dared to speak. Schenk stood there with an open mouth. Faust was confused. Was that a lot of money? Why is everybody so shocked? He chose to ask Aquila quietly. Is that a lot of money? Yet his voice could be heard in the entire room. Faust immediately blushed and wished to sink into the earth as dozens of eyes fell on him. Then the entire room started laughing heartily. Schenk was the loudest. Faust was confused even more by the cheerful atmosphere. Aquila enlightened him. It's a sum so large, it's completely unheard of. Never mind 300 additional soldiers. One can train and equip 1,000 men with that money. I would know. I would know. My father was the reeve of our village. I learned a lot about finances from him. After the initial commotion had died down, Schenk held a short speech. Comrades, the day has come. Finally, we will be able to strike back at the Bloodhand tribe. We have endured for long enough. The time of revenge will come. This letter. It's our ticket to revenge and peace. No longer will families be torn apart, villages burned, and prisoners taken. It is our time to strike back. His speech roused the soldiers in the room. Everyone had jumped up and roared with fighting spirit, beating their chests with their fists in unison. Faust was equally excited. His blood boiled when he realized that in a few years, he might get the opportunity to strike back at the cause of his pain. To take revenge. He stood up and roared with enthusiasm. Vostrum Castle housed 200 soldiers and could raise 800 levied troops from surrounding villages in the case of war. These levies would perform normal jobs during peacetime and pick up arms in the case of war. The difference between a professional soldier and a levied one was huge. A professional soldier spent all his time training and performing missions, and had seen much more conflict than a levied soldier, mostly farmers and craftsmen. Their value and combat efficiency were multiple times higher. Such a radical increase in the size of the army meant good chances for promotion, better equipment, and money. In addition to that, Almost everyone in the room had lost one or more friends and relatives to the Bloodhand tribe over the years. They yearned to crush their enemies that had inflicted so much sorrow. A day later, the castle reacted to the news like an ant's nest that was poked into. It was bustling with activity. Messengers were sent out to all villages. Blacksmiths received large weapon orders. Carpenters started building new barracks outside of the castle. Soldiers were promoted, and news spread like wildfire. In the chaos of these changes, Beatus had canceled the planned training to take care of more pressing matters. Schenk and his trusted aides were covered in work from dusk till dawn. Faust used this free time to go for a walk. In this short week, he had already gained a bit of weight, and he felt much better already. He went up the castle walls to look into the distance and enjoy the landscape. He was just done staring at a small hill in the distance when he noticed a female laugh behind him. "What are you doing here all alone? Did they also cancel your training?" When Faust turned to look, his eyes turned round. It was Leona. She was wearing pants and a shirt. Men's clothing. He wasn't surprised, though. He had seen her a few times in it. Yet every time he saw her in these clothes, he couldn't help but get inappropriate thoughts. Couldn't help but let his eyes roam a bit when he looked at her. Her posture and mocking smile radiated confidence. She knew exactly what effect she had on him, and seemed to enjoy the attention. "My eyes are up here, Faust." She smirked as he blushed. She raised an eyebrow and stood next to him. She smelled of flowers. "Sorry," he said, while he obviously wasn't, and smirked at her. Now it was her turn to blush. "Bold," she just said, and looked into the distance. "I'm bored when I can't train. My instructor is covered in work, so he can't practice with me." She sighed dejectedly. "Do you like training so much?" Faust asked, and cocked his head. "I love it. If I could, I'd do it all day, every day." But sadly, there's a limitation on how much a body can handle. She giggled and flexed her arms. The boy smiled. "It never gets boring." "Nope." He pondered before frowning. "I can't fight at all. I've only ever worked on the farm." "That's sad. If you want, I can show you a few things. Nobody else dares to practice with the Baron's daughter." She shook her head. "I don't bite. They're just afraid of hurting me." She threw her hands in the air. "Will you be my practice partner?" She looked at him eagerly, with her hands clasped together in front of her body. Faust. She was slightly taller than him after all. I, he stammered. "I'll take that as a yes." A bright smile showed on her face as she briefly hugged him, nearly suffocating him. He was quite a bit weaker than her, he noticed. "Thank you. Thank you." She had a cheeky smirk on her face. Faust surrendered. "All right. I'll be your training partner. Please, show me how to fight." He laughed to himself. "I would have accepted anyways. How can one be so eager to practice?" Faust wanted to start learning as fast as possible. He wanted to be strong. He wanted to take revenge. And a good opportunity presented itself to him. "You know, I practiced close combat ever since I was a child. I'll teach you the basics of wrestling." Don't worry, I won't hit you, but I might throw you. She winked, and Faust laughed nervously, which she found cute. She liked the boy, though it was only a good impression, nothing more. Leona never cared about the background of the people she interacted with. The entire castle was just like her in this aspect, much to the distaste of other nobles. Schenk, who had risen through the ranks relying on himself, treated his underlings and commoners with respect and empathy. Let's go outside of the city. I don't like the crowded training yards, Leona suggested. And Faust shrugged. Whatever you say, milady. Stop saying that. She hissed and punched him on the shoulder before laughing. Just call me by my first name. Pentunardi. Amornardi. Kir. Go beat. Per. Angie. We're friends now. Her attitude surprised him and made him laugh. They slowly made their way out of the castle. As they left, a girl watched them laugh and joke with one another from another. Flora. Flora. She wore a sad smile as she watched the two teenagers. She was jealous. There's nothing between them, is there? She thinks to herself. Mirabella had grown very fond of Flora, who showed a passion for the arts, dresses, and elegance her daughter lacked. Mirabella had bonded with Flora a lot already. She was the only other person besides Faust Flora felt she could trust fully. Mirabella was happy she could impart her knowledge and passions, such as embroidery or sewing beautiful clothes, to Flora. The girl ran towards Mirabella's chambers as fast as her feet could carry. When she arrived, she could see Schenk leaving the room hurriedly. He winked at her and walked off before adding, "Give her a few minutes." Flora was confused, yet waited outside for a bit before knocking. "Who is it?" Mirabella's voice resounded from the inside. "It's me, Flora," the girl shouted. Mirabella laughed and told her to come in. When she opened the door and looked inside, she realized why Schenk had told her to wait. Mirabella was making her bed. She had tied her hair up, but Flora could still see that it was a bit messy. The dress Mirabella wore was only hastily pulled over. Someone with a less keen eye wouldn't have noticed, but Flora did. When Mirabella smiled at her, the girl could see that her face was flushed. Flora couldn't look Mirabella in the eyes and blushed profusely, nervously fumbling with her hands. When Mirabella realized that Flora understood what happened, Mirabella laughed. "Well, since you've figured it out anyways, I don't need to hide it. I'm only 30 after all. We just had some marital fun. No need to be ashamed." Mirabella walked over with a smile. Yet Flora wasn't ashamed. She was fighting an inner battle. When Mirabella walked closer, Flora had mustered her courage and exclaimed, "Please, help me impress Faust." When Mirabella heard the girl's request, she smirked. "He won't be able to take his eyes off you. Let's see what we can do for you. After all, I'm a professional at impressing men." She giggled, and Flora was very nervous. Her move was quite bold, but she couldn't sit still after seeing Faust leave with Leona. Mirabella had already started rummaging through her wardrobe. "He's mine," the girl thought with a determined expression. 8. Professional teaser Faust followed Leona out of the castle. Many of the castle's inhabitants greeted her as they passed through the narrow, bustling streets. She seems to like the attention. Faust thought and chuckled. She waved at many of them, and even called some by their names. I have a place a bit outside of town where I usually practice wrestling. It's a small open patch of grass in a group of trees. I'm telling you, I might be a woman, but as of now, I'm still stronger than you. She teased him. Don't get any weird thoughts during practice, or I'll tell my father, she added, and Faust laughed nervously. You might be stronger now, but in a few weeks, that will change. Mark my words. He laughed. She's pretty, but why is she talking about getting funny ideas? Has it happened before? Couldn't be. Shank would have murdered that guy. She couldn't be flirting. No. Probably not. He snorted. I will focus on learning. That made her chuckle. What now? Is she not satisfied with that either? What's with her? He couldn't understand Leona's intentions. His reaction left her a bit lost. She didn't consider that Faust just had his mind elsewhere, not seeing her the way most other boys his age did. She was used to getting stared at. This was new for her. Of course, Faust knew nothing about her thoughts. She gulped and realized why he didn't look at her that way after a while. His mind was on training already. She smiled inwardly. He might just be the kind of freak I always wanted as a training partner. Let's see if he is any talented. She giggled and Faust looked at her questioningly, but she just smiled and shook her head. Wired woman, Faust concluded, but had to admit he was thankful she would teach him. It felt weird to learn fighting from a woman. But he laughed at himself and decided to throw his pride out of the window. I have to learn how to fight. I have to. The faster, the better. They arrived at a small group of trees 10 minutes later. They walked another 2 minutes until they reached an open space large enough to wrestle. The ground was soft and dry. Perfect. This is it. Let's get ready, shall we? Leona exclaimed as she cracked her neck and slowly started to remove her shirt, right in front of him. Faust's eyes grew wide, and he hurriedly covered his eyes. His face was beet red. Crazy girl. Why would she undress in front of me? Shank will kill me. After a few seconds of silence, Leona laughed out loud. Faust, what are you doing? He could hear her laughing sweetly. What do you think I'm doing? I'm covering my eyes, so your father won't hang me off the castle walls. Faust exclaimed a bit helplessly. She said nothing, but he could hear her coming closer. He gulped. What is she doing? Then he felt her hand on his arm that covered his eyes. Why don't you take a look? She whispers into his ear. His thoughts spun. What do? I can't. The voice of reason tried to argue in his head, but it was drowned by his hormones. He slowly removed his hand and looked at Leona, who stood right before him with a smirk, her hands crossed in front of her chest. She had bandaged her upper body and chest tightly for practice. He could see her flat stomach, perfect shoulders, and collarbone. Yet everything indecent was covered. Let's practice, she said with a telling smirk. Faust's embarrassed expression quickly turned into a wry smile. You're evil. I was ready to sacrifice my life for a peek, and I was disappointed. He put a hand on his chest and dramatically proclaimed. Leona blinked a few times. She hadn't expected this kind of reaction. Then she chuckled as she caught him staring. "Don't eye me like a hungry lion. We're here to fight." She laughed, very satisfied with herself. Faust shook his head with a grin. "Let's start with the practice. Enough fooling around." I never knew she had this playful side to her. He marveled. He removed his shirt to not dirty the linen unnecessarily after a moment of hesitation. His upper body looked healthier already. No longer as skinny, yet one could still see he was malnourished. Then Faust noticed a change in Leona's expression. All her playfulness was gone in a flash. She was in fight mode. "Have you ever wrestled before?" "Sometimes, with my father," he admitted. Then both got into a wrestling stance, bowing forwards, lowering their upper bodies. Faust had to gulp. Leona's eyes could give one chills when she was fighting. She calmly analyzed his stance and how he reacted if she reached out for him. She easily dodged as he tried to grab her wrist. She then quickly pulled the hand he had reached out for her, and she brought him off balance before tripping him. Faust was confident he could at least put up a bit of resistance, but he noticed that she didn't even use a lot of strength. Her technique was just much more refined, and her speed was ridiculous in his eyes. Her skin is so soft. She looks awesome when she's fighting. He marveled before turning his attention back to practice after catching his thoughts wandering. He needed to focus. "Your basic stance is decent, but as soon as you act, you lose your balance. Look, I'll show you how to do it," she calmly explained. In the next 2 hours of practice, she patiently pointed out many mistakes, and Faust gave his best to follow her instructions. After applying some of her advice, his movements already felt much more natural and stable. They only tried to make each other lose balance and fall. No more, no less. Faust hit the ground dozens of times. Maybe even hundreds of times. Yet not once did he curse. He was focused on the task at hand, improving. Whenever his mind wandered, he brought it right back to the practice. How come he isn't complaining? I've been throwing him around for hours. Leona wondered. His progress was good and amazed her. She had seen many more talented people, but they had come from soldier families. She chuckled at her thoughts. It is his first day. He can make up for a lack of talent with hard work. Just like you. She told herself, and thought back to when she started. She had been thrown around like a rag doll, yet she spent a crazy amount of practice to perfect her technique. By now, she was able to take down men slightly heavier and stronger than her, which was already an incredible feat for a woman. If only I could obtain the strength a man could. She sighed to herself. She was a hard worker. But hard work could only do so much in the face of biological differences. Weapon combat wasn't much better. Faust was focused on the techniques she had shown him. Bend my knees slightly. Keep my center of mass low. He repeated what he had learned. What frustrated him was that he sensed that she was still holding back. On the other hand, he was glad she was. He didn't want to know what she would do with him if she went all out. After 2 hours, they sat on the grass exhaustedly. You're a quick learner. Leona tried to motivate him. If you want, I can teach you more often when you're free. Faust smiled. You're a good teacher. I would love to learn more from you. Faust was surprised and humbled by the incredible prowess she had shown. She must have spent so much time on this. It's incredible she could reach such a level at her age. He mustered her body. She was completely ripped, yet elegant. Her muscles showed, though it didn't make her appearance more masculine. She noticed his stares, raised an eyebrow, and smirked. I'm starting to get the feeling you only want to practice more often since you get to spend time with me. She teased. He smiled dryly. I'll give her a taste of her own medicine. Faust then leaned back, smiled at her, and with a smug smile replied, What if you were right? He looked at her face and triumphantly snickered when she blushed and hastily looked away. Don't say things like that if you don't mean them, she replied. He could hear a tinge of shyness in her voice, and the situation turned awkward. They sat there in silence. Faust could feel his heart beating. She was Skank's daughter. He couldn't say such things to her, could he? He looked over at her one more time before standing up and walking over to her. He had made a decision. She looked up at him with an awkward smile. He offered her his hand and she took it, letting him help her up. As she was about to say something, he gathered his courage and stated, I meant what I said. I'm looking forward to making our practice a regular thing. He smiled, and Leona blushed, but he could see a happy smile on her face.